Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Frank and Stan chat. And this is one of our spotlight editions where we take a particular topic and invite a particular guest to come and join us. And for those of you watching on video, you'll see that at the bottom of our screens, you'll see Josh Mangas, who's joined us. Hello, Josh.
Hello, Frank.
Yeah.
Hi, Josh.
Hello, Stan. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks for having me. I'm really nice to be on here. Thanks for inviting me.
No, well, it's great. I've known Josh a few years, although we've been in contact more recently, but there was a period where we didn't have much contact. But it's great to be back in it. And of course, we'll get into the sort of the work you're doing, but you're currently in Lancashire.
I am.
Dan used to work in Lancashire, so there is a connection there.
But I met Josh and we had not a handover, but we had a conversation about what it was like working in a large authority.
I still look back to that conversation when we first met because I had no idea what I was going into at that point to go through. So I was listening to what you were saying, but that's thinking, some 4 or 5 years later now, I think, okay, I get that now. I get that.
Yeah.
Where's this Stan?
So they're aware we're going to be talking a lot about governance today, and that's a topic actually we haven't spoken about recently, Stan.
No.
It's dropped into conversation, but having a specific discussion about governance, I think it's sort of timely. I've stopped being a trustee a few months ago, and I miss it. I do miss it. But anyway, I'm not seeking a post. Just want to put the word out there at this moment in time.
Governance too much, haven't you?
Before you jump on me, then, Josh. But anyway. Yeah, Josh, I met Josh, I can't remember, it must have been about 2018, 2017, something like that. Might be a little bit later. Because Josh was a senior manager at Co-op Academy Walkden. And that was a school that the co-op was going to take on board. And so that's the first time I met Josh. I also remember, Josh, you allowed us to allow me to speak to the student body, and they gave me a rough time. So I do remember that meeting very strongly, where you were encouraging them to be very honest, and I was grateful for that, because there was actually quite a lot to resolve in that school, and I think got an indication of that when the pupils started talking to me. But anyway, he's now moved on to be leading really the Lancashire County Council's governance services, and I think, how long have you been doing that for, Josh?
Since 2022 now, so it's come up to over 4 years now, so into the fifth, coming up to the 5th year now.
But he's also the chair of governors at St Andrews, which is in Ramsbottom, and in a way what's happened here is Josh has developed a framework in a way for governance, and I spoke to him a few months ago and felt it was probably something that was needed, and so I've invited him on to come and give us a little bit of a lowdown as to what he's done and how it's developing and how well it's being received. So do you want to just do a little intro then, Josh, to my intro to you as to what you've been up to recently?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for inviting me on today. Obviously, I've got a lot of respect working with you both. Stan, you were on the governing board at Walkden when I was there as well. The first inspiration into governance, really, that I've got.
Oh, don't overdo it, Josh. Please.
I'm going for you now as well.
I'm still a governor, but not there.
Yeah, still got the bug for it. And I was really inspired by your leadership as well at the Co-op, Frank, and what community meant to you. You taught me a lot about community and the value community within that. I think you gave me the confidence through your leadership to put you in that challenging position with the children through that change, because in that conversion process, it happens to the children. We sometimes forget about that, don't we? And stakeholders are the most important aspect, and making sure your stakeholders are heard across many divisions. I think we missed that, didn't we, at Walkden, and that helped us really rewind it. But it's important for me to present, and we spoke of that previously before we said, is to give that unbiased information. And when you're working with people, to build up trust and integrity, that you're not just pushing one narrative or one way, and you're allowing people to show with all those balanced views. So really enjoyed our time, and I've learned a lot from you both that's kind of taken into this journey into governance. So I moved into governance from Walkden. I came in quite as a fledgling, really, expecting a system Governance must know what it's doing. It must know what it's doing, that it's in there. I'm going to go in and follow it. And I spent the first 2 years really learning about what happens. And I spend a lot of time working over 500 schools, spend a lot of time speaking to chairs, to heads, to governors, delivering training, listening to them. And I've got a strong sense of empathy. I'm very vicarious, and I'll live through others. And when people have problems or struggles, I can't just wash over it. I obsess over them a lot. About how we can fix them practically, not just with consulting and coaching, but actually with practical tools and help that they can do. And so that grounding of listening to so many different voices, where you start realizing that there is actually a really big problem with governance here, and governors make up the very best people, and I mean that genuinely. It's not just a platitude that I throw out just to get people on board. They are the best people that they're out there, but they're thrown in the deep end without any support whatsoever. And if you're in a maintained school, particularly, I think you're in an even harder position, because you are told that you're left at arm's length, and you live at arm's. You've got independence to carry out your duties, which you think, oh, that's great, independence, working at arm's length. But often that's just isolation and lack of clarity, and desperation about what do we do. And a lot of governing boards are just doing what they've always done. So
Hey, do you know, Joshua, I agree with you on the maintained element, but also even in sort of SATs, single academy trusts, or in very small multi-academy trusts, there's the same sort of sense of isolation as well. You know what I mean? Because they may buy in a governance service, but it's not a bespoke governance service. You know what I mean?
absolutely right. Where you've got trusts that've got established governance, departments and functions. Co-op, for example, fabulous the way they run that their governance. But we're going to have more and more mats created, smaller ones coming up, and they don't have that infrastructure soon. And I'm not sure that the sector really understands governance. They think they do, and that's the problem. There's nothing more dangerous than thinking you understand something than understanding it. And what governance is that if you're just going to hire the wrong person just to take over governance, you have to have a real understanding of what governance is. And it's really abstract in its current state. You have the Maintain Schools Guide for the trusts and for schools, the governance handbook, and that exists here. And that tells schools you should do this, or it's almost like preaching. This is what it is. This is what we should be doing. What's in the middle? There's absolutely nothing. And then at the end, there's an inspection that comes and absolutely hammers governors when they're not good enough. When what's been there in the middle to say this is what you do? If you take any other sector, whether it's healthcare or finance or technology, there are systems or operations of excellence to say this happens at this time, this is what you do here. Takes romance out of it a little bit, but becomes a system. And I think where governance lacks the system, egos take over, voices take over, individuals take over in the governing board, and that creates stress within there, but also creates a lot of issues within governing boards as they become only as strong as a certain few members, so the chair or the vice chair or the head teacher. So they're very fallible to risk or to those people leaving. And that presents itself in many different ways, where you've got chairs in positions that say, I just can't step down. There's nobody ready to take over. If that's in every board, or we've got too many passive governors that don't speak for whatever reason. It's because it's too dominant on those individuals that have just had the confidence, usually because they're in the sector themselves, which then creates its own issues. But there's too much reliance on key individuals. And I don't think governance in its current state, we talk about recruitment issue, but it's just not an attractive proposition to anybody to become a chair or anybody to become a governor. And that's because of the support system. So that's what I'm trying to tackle, is how do we make it more attractive, easier, and more, the system that people say, I understand what I'm doing now. And I'm confident that's what I've built, because I was working with schools to do that. So I'm in the practical solution space, which I don't think exists. So there's a framework which clearly guides, and a set of tools and methodologies that help you govern and say, look, if you want to, whatever level of governance, this is what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I've just stepped away from. I mean, I became an interim CEO to get a small trust in East Manchester over a merger, and I was a trustee. I've been a trustee at that trust since 2019. Of course, when I became the CEO, I had to step down from being the trustee. But I found, even though I knew a lot about governance, I'd seen it on both sides. You know, I think one of the things that I found it stressful. I found it quite, well, very, very challenging. Probably one of the most challenging things I've ever done, because in a way there wasn't anybody that I could turn to. We were so small. We had one governance officer in charge, and there just wasn't that sort of like support network around, because a lot of the things you couldn't really say openly because some of them some of the things were very confidential, and I felt sort of professionally isolated, to be honest. And I'm somebody who's been around the houses quite a few times. I don't know if you felt that, Stan, or whether or not
I
you're a
do think
stronger.
when when you're dealing with some issues, let's say complaints or disciplinary, um, there's not enough guidance to say when I'm sort of saying to a governor, no, you can't be involved in this because we need to save enough governors to
Yeah, to do with an appeal.
manage an appeal, and yet I know that there's no way that Governor A is not going to know everything that Governor B has said at that point, and that discipline that's required for separation of duties, it I won't say it's impossible, but it's not natural because these are a group of people who are volunteering.
Mm.
Um, they're of the same ilk. They probably live in the same area.
Yeah, yeah,
A lot of them will have children at the school or close contacts with the school, and it's that kind of understanding that although I'm a volunteer and I'm a parent, in this role I have a lot more things to think about
Mhm.
and a lot more things to do, and I'm not a representative of parent. That's the other one.
Yeah.
The parent governors think they are a representative of,
Yeah.
of parents. They've come to me and they've said this. Well, they shouldn't.
Wrote about this recently, and again, that's a lack of understanding about the governance. They think
It's,
the constitutional role is their duty on that. That's just how they make sure the board is representative of their, it's
yeah,
fairly representative. They need a role and they need a responsibility, but that comes again through, do people actually understand governance, that are supporting, that we're making those clear distinctions between roles? And I don't like to use the word roles anymore. I like to use the word responsibilities for governors, because if something doesn't happen, it doesn't get done. Where roles can sometimes just be a title that people cling on to. I've been this governor for so many years. And when we talk about governor responsibilities, we can tie that to SIP visits, to statutory visits, to these functions as well. And I do
Is
move on
this
to that.
is this part of you use the term structural gap?
Yeah.
Is this what you actually mean, or is this something slightly different to this?
No, this is what I mean. I think that if you look at any other industry of governance, of operational excellence, they have clear frameworks to say this is what it is and how you go through. And there's training that says at this step you do this, at this step you do this, at this step. There's nothing that exists through there in governance. And I think you have the advisory bodies and you have great organisations such as the NGA. You have platforms such as Govern Hub, which is helps you organise and keep your information in there. But actually, what it is and how you get it done doesn't exist. So this structure has been created through all the conversations that I've had with governors, where they feel isolated with that. And so what I've done over 11 different categories of governance, created an indexed, think of it as a quality kite mark with a maturity system over 3 stages. You've got compliance, assurance. So compliance, we've got the basics and the things that we need to get done, but you can't live in compliance. Compliance needs culture and it needs evidence that that's actually happening. So we have the assurance stage, which is all based around getting governors into school. That's the one thing that's kind of inspired me, that we need to structure governor visits and put more emphasis on visits. Because when we get that right collectively on the governing board, that makes the quality of our meetings. Meetings should be a celebration of the work that's gone on, a collaboration between the head teacher, who's also the governor, at that meeting to capture all the work that's been done and make sure we're not missing anything and being honest about where we are and creating that knowledge. So with that assurance part, and I've built that around a series of tools. I take the school's improvement plan, school improvement plan, and you'd be surprised how many boards are not inspected that are using the school improvement as their guiding document
Mm.
for that. And they, under this new framework, they're getting caught out now, because when they're asked how do you know the school is making progress, what are the risks and threats, they haven't got a clue because they're stuck being a geography. My role is I'm geography governor, I'm art governor. And I tell governors, if it's not a priority, why are you making it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
things? Align your governor roles to the school priorities. And so I create a plan for governing boards. That's the first thing. And I'm doing that most days this week, going into schools, where I take the SIP, I create their plan, and it's a structured, standardized plan across all the priorities. So if a school has 6 priorities in a school improvement plan, there'll be 6 individual plans mapped over the 3 terms with thematic questions that governors ask at these questions, all consistent across the priorities, and then some priority specific questions. And the reason I generate the questions for governors is because I believe you should have any experience of governor be able to come into the school and have a good conversation structured. How can they do that if they're not from the profession, confidently, without having some guidance in there. And what that does when you preempt and pre-create the questionnaires independently for the school, it allows the school to be open and transparent about why governors are coming in. So I expect, and I say to the governing boards, if you're coming in a visit, it should never feel like an ambush. It should be agreed why you're coming in. So informed by the school improvement plan, which has been cascaded down through the staff and delegated through, we now have our visits plan, which is aligned to that with questions across the different stages. And the 3 stages are early implementation. So where are we with this progress in the autumn? How's it looking? And what we're looking to find out as governors in that visit, is it fair on the member of the staff? Is it working well with the children? Have they been trained? Is it actually part of their appraisal system? Questions that can get asked. Whereas if we're not in that space asking those questions, we're relying on the reassurance at meetings from head teachers to do that.
Yeah, can I just say on the performance management issue, it is remarkable how the governors or the school head teacher, principal, whatever, has got these 3 or 4 big projects that they need to deliver this year, but you don't need to go far down the leadership team for those to get completely lost. It might be passed on to, say, the senior staff, the 3 or 4 at the top, but beyond that, they all then sort of I'm in charge of this, so these are my priorities now. The sense that the whole staff are pulling together on the 3 or 4 key priorities. I have to say that's very, very rare when I find that happening in a school.
And I take that a stage further, Frank, because working in, like, when I first became an advisor in Lancashire, we were told what the county council priorities were.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And they were based on the results of all the schools. And so the head of the advisory service then said, so I would expect schools to be looking at these priorities in their own school. And I said, well, why would I do that? Just straight out of headship.
Yeah.
If your priority is reading, why would I do that when reading at my school is a real strength?
Yeah.
Well, and there was just this crazy feeling that the priorities cascaded down, and everybody bought into those priorities regardless of the context of an individual school. And I think that's an issue in schools with, if you take the context of an individual classroom, where the priority might not be, the issue might not be in that classroom what the whole school issue is.
True.
And yet somehow you've got to apply it to that classroom.
Yeah.
There's so many gaps. These are the gaps that we can miss from that. And this is where the governor visits, structured governor visits, which align to the priorities, are really important. So let's take an example where we're not doing our visits. And the majority of governing boards are not doing effective visits. They think they're going in to visit, but they're just doing nice tasks for the children. They're not doing governance within that. So let's take an example where governors are not doing their visits and they're relying off the head teacher to give them all that information. And let's say one of the SIP priorities is transcriptional skills and phonics, for example. And the head teacher saying, and the governor asks, as they would do, how we're making progress on that issue, on the SIP. And they'll say, making great progress, it's settling in, the children are liking it, and the data's looking really good, and really positive feedback from the staff, and the staff governor who's just there under duress. Yes, they're making good, the role. We'll ratify that. And the governing board will ask a few many questions. Okay, can we have an update next term? That's a reassurance state. I don't like that. I feel uncomfortable in reassurance. That's why I talk about assurance. Let's flip this in now to these thematic structured visits where governors go in, they know their responsibilities. And they're asking questions. How does it feel? This just at the beginning, as a layman, and anybody can go in under this structure. How's it feeling? You feeling okay with this target? Well, actually, Josh, I've not been trained, and I've only just got told last week that I've got this. And the key group that I'm working with, that I'm supposed to get to 95, which is 20% over national average, which I'm already stressed about. That group, they're not even in school. So how am I going to get them to there if they're not in school? So immediately, straight away, I can be a champion for that member of staff at the next governing board meeting and say, thanks for the information on that, but how is this target realistic if those children are not in? What's the wider attendance strategy to get them into school to give us a chance of doing this? And also the staff member said that they'd like to maybe get some extra training or support, work with other schools. What we're going to do to support this member of staff to give them every chance to do that. When we're in that assurance state, linked to the priority, and everybody's doing that across all the priorities, you're getting a really knowledgeable. And these themes across the terms, early implementation, second term, is risk and threats. So we've been doing this a few months. Does it look like we're on track to do this? Yeah, it looks really good now. Thanks to what you did last month. That's really helpful. Really feeling a lot more confident now. And at the end of the year, have we done it? Consolidation outcomes, really simple. 3 stages across the term, linked to the priorities. And if you've got a script, you can share that with a staff member. They know why the governors are coming in. So they can prepare for that. Because I believe, again, open and transparency, nobody should be ambushed. Not the head teacher, not everybody. Governance is a system. We're all agreeing. We're all part of that school improvement plan. If it's been communicated that this is what we're doing, we're all buying into it. So we allow the staff member to prepare properly. And when you've got this framework of visits that you're coming in that's open and transparent, it fixes that operational versus strategic issue, because it's not just governors that drift off on visits and go off on tangents, because they do that through nerves. It's no fault of their own. It's just, I'm here, I should be asking something. And all the time you're fueled by anxiety, thinking, I hope I'm not stressing this other person out. And when you're in that state, you often do make things worse. But it's not just the governors that drift. It's the staff member too, because they're nervous because they don't know why the governor's coming in. Maybe they got it last minute or so, and they start talking about things. And then maybe if the culture's not right in the school, they see it as an opportunity to whistle blow. And then the governor feels, oh my word, I need to capture all this. Where do I go? You'll have seen these scenarios all the time. But when it's the script is there, you can say, I'm only here to talk about these things. This is all we're talking about today, to the staff member. If the governor starts going off adrift, the staff member can go back, this is what we're talking about here. To go through. So it keeps it very concise. And if you're building up that knowledge of the governing board on your school improvement plan, and I've ignored the statutory for now, but they have their place as well. You're in that position. I've been in this position myself. You're in a very strong position when Ofsted come in and say, how do you assure progress? You can show them your plan. You can show the visit reports, which also complement with this. The very structured visit reports take 15 minutes. It's incredible evidence. And this is how you become Ofsted ready. And this is a response to all the kind of emergency calls I get from schools. Oh, I think we've got Ofsted. Can you come and do? Can you do the Ofsted inspection course? Or preparing for Ofsted, like that's some sort of magic trick that's going to get them through Ofsted. It won't work. They'll see through it. It's about what's that process and that system that's been there. I've got foundation governors in the 70s. I've got people from different professions writing the most amazing governor reports because they know what they're going in to ask. And the anxiety has been taken away from those visits.
I mean, this sounds great, doesn't it? But actually,
I would just caution Josh on one thing on that, and it was probably the speed you were telling us, where is everything going great? There's also are we on track? Well, actually, no, we're not. Do we stop doing it and do something different because it's not working, rather than do we wait till the end of the year and review it, because that's actually too late for that particular goal.
That's a tool that's used in digital work, isn't it? They call it being agile. Let's do it for a short period of time. Let's really blitz it. Let's all get together and say, what are the chances of this actually working? And people say a very little chance, so they dump it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong in saying at the end of that school improvement plan, saying here are the 6 targets. Actually, 4 of them aren't working. We haven't done it. Well, why have we got to the end of the year and we've done that?
Governors, given what Josh said about having a script, having knowledge about what the kind of questions you can be asked, they can be the ones that say, well, clearly this isn't working. Because everybody else has got an investment. I remember being asked once by some American visitor, how come the literacy strategy is working so well when it really wasn't?
Yeah.
I said, because everybody who's in it has an investment in it, and it's easier to say, yes, it's working well, than to start criticizing it. So all the way up the chain, everybody's nodding and saying, yes, it's working really well. And I think, I actually think this is why Ofsted originally had the lay inspector.
It was.
You could come in and say, but that's clearly not working. I work in a different industry and we wouldn't put up with that. But I think that's a powerful thing, that a well-trained governor or a well-informed governor could actually bring that shock value that says, but it isn't working, is it? You keep telling us how well it's going, but actually it's not.
Yeah. What about, I've worked on a lot of boards and I've inspected a lot of boards. We all have, haven't we? We've all had contact with lots. I can't imagine what the figure would be if you tally it all up. But actually, what you're suggesting, actually, I think for some governors and trustees, it's too much.
Yeah.
Actually, they're not they want to do the right thing, but they haven't really got the time to do what you want them to do. You know what I mean? So I suppose the challenge is, what do we, both of you, think, about saying, well, let's slim it down. Is it better to have fewer governors, trustees, who are really know what they're doing and actually are, putting the effort and have got the time, rather than have people who just, well, occasionally turn up for meetings, which is, and sadly, that's what does happen. There's very little contact, but it feels as though they want to do the right thing, but they don't really feel as though they've got the time to do it. So where do you think you are with that?
I have high expectations of governors, really high expectations of governors. I think there's no bigger group of body of people that remind you that they're volunteers more than governors. And I often think that's because not they found the joy and the love of governance, and it's too much of a hardship. When you're living just in the meeting space, and there are many governors that just turn up meetings, that's not where you get not what doesn't it's not where you get the love of governance. It's not where you see it. It's very short lived, and there's no enjoyment there if that's just where it is. You get the enjoyment from a governance. It's a slow burner governance in the sense that you have to be in the game quite a lot of time to see that your changes have made an impact, to have those relationships, to see headships change, to maybe see on inspections, to go through some of the challenges of the schools. But it comes from creating a connection with the school and feeling connected to it. You can't get that from meetings. You can't get that. And I often the first thing I stress to governors, and I make it clear, and every governing board that I'm working with, I'm saying, if you're a governor in my school, my expectation is, as a governor, this is clear what you do. If you're a governor in my school, you do one visit per term. That's the expectation. You come into school. And I structure that around, I don't believe in ad hoc governor visits. I think they're unstructured. And when they're ad hoc, invariably they don't happen, right? They don't. We have governor visits weeks, and that's what I encourage school. Set a week that's governor visits weeks. That's where the governors come in. Make it a flagship event, but you put it on your calendar each term. This is when we do that. Make it happen before the meetings. And then outside of that, you can shut the door off, the school goes on, but that's when we do it and arrange it. And if you let your governors know this is your commitment, that you need to come in at this date, and you let them know in advance, they go, right, this is what we do. And if you make that process easy for them and say, this is what you'll be doing, and this is what you're asking, this is what you're looking for, this is how you'll report back. And then at the meeting, that'll feed into the meeting. And we make that less about the head teacher's report filling that space, but more governors collaborating and verifying, what's happening in there. That's really important to do. So you have high expectations. This is what you do. This is your responsibility. You come to the meetings and then you engage in training. When you've got, and I tell this to a lot of governing boards, you've got football coaches, netball coaches, DAV coaches, lifeguards that give so much time to the community. They complain about volunteering, and they give so much more because they get that reflective glory really quickly, and that fills the heart with love and joy. They think, I see why I'm doing this because I see it, and so they don't need that reminder about time because they're getting value for it. And so what happens with governance, the value is not just given, and the importance and the responsibility is not conveyed to the governors. At the beginning, it's often sold as it's just a few meetings. I wouldn't be a governor now if it was just about the meetings at all. You have to tell them what the responsibility is, how they're going to do it. So it looks like this. It's the same for the chair as well. If you're a chair, these are the things that need to be in place because we have to make it more attractive for chairs as well when they're coming in, especially from outside of the sector. This is what governance looks like. These are your tools and your mechanisms to go through. And when you give governors the tools and chairs the tools and the systems to work around, it becomes a lot less stressful. You reduce the cognitive load, the anxiety, because I think that's what's the problem for governor. It's the anxiety about the role. Oh, I don't know what I'm going to ask at the meeting. I don't know what I'm going to do at the teacher. I don't want to bother the school. But everything's pre-agreed. It's set in time. It's structured. Like schools are the most timetabled institutions in the whole world, yet governance is totally ad hoc and flexible with that as outside the meetings. And let's add a little bit of structure back in, a little bit more expectation, and challenge the governors a little bit more, but make it easier for them. So I think it's about making governance attractive. And I've recently done, I won't veer off, but I've done a recruitment campaign within Edge Hill to student teachers. I've done a series. I'm actually there this afternoon where I've promoted governance to young people. Because again, the sector will say governance, there's only 1% of governors that are under 30. Nobody's doing anything. Nobody's selling it to them.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I've got 20 young students that I've sold governance to as a win-win for them about leadership literacy, about development, about how they can demonstrate, if they're going for their first job, if they say they're already a governor and they understand what the priorities are in school, they're miles ahead of the game. I signed up 20. I'm working with them now to place them into schools in Lancashire, and that was just one school. I'm going to be replicating that.
That's amazing.
Well, I I'm blessed, I suppose. Excuse me. I work with an extremely skillful governing body. What I find my difficulty is sometimes I'm blown away by what these governors offer and what they bring to meetings. And I want to say that was brilliant. But it comes over, if I'm not careful, as just patronising. That was brilliant, nearly as good as me kind of
But
thing.
they go, but this is what I do, Stan.
Yeah, I know, and they do, but it's just sometimes I don't know what to say. I breathe out and go, "Wow, that's fantastic!" That you've brought that to the meeting and got over the anxiousness of saying something in a meeting about that and about because I remember at Walkden there was a really good governor who decided he'd had enough. He was at the finance, and as he was going, he said, "It's all become cliquey." And I was thinking, well, I'm new. I can't see that there's a clique anywhere. And then afterwards, I thought, well, maybe that was the chair knew, me knew, somebody from the co-op knew, and we were communicating. Maybe we were the clique. I didn't spot it.
I think some governors view the clique as those that understand some of the complicated stuff that's thrown at them, and they don't understand it. I
Mm,
can say I certainly in this trustee role and also in the CEO role I had for a short period of time. There were a lot of very committed parents there, some of whom had a really good understanding about what the attainment data or progress data was about, but quite a few of the parents didn't really get it. They just didn't understand, and when it got to the point where they were talking about standard deviation and stuff like this, I mean, you can understand how people feel that, well, you're in with him, aren't you? Or she's with you because she
mm,
understands it. We're the group over here that don't understand it. And
Yeah.
really, there's, no one's really tried to reach out and help us. I can understand how that clique can feel, can come about. Um,
yeah,
yeah. I mean,
Like that knowledge is isolated around those few core members, and that's a real
yeah,
threat to strong governance. The kind of the continuity, which is the final stage of the framework that I've built, is that if you're too reliant, you're a weak governing board if you're only too reliant on a few members of people, and that's a real weakness, and that's a worry of mine because those voices become too strong, they become too dominant, and then ultimately for the other person that's sitting there in that environment, why would they want to volunteer their time
yeah,
to
yeah.
input?
Hey, so just I'm just conscious of time here. We've got about 5 minutes. So you've created the framework. Is that being rolled out then across Lancashire? Well, the schools that you support in Lancashire.
It's built with all the schools that I work out. So the framework that I've built, I've made it free to schools. It's completely free. They can log on the website and they can complete that framework and they work through. The idea is to develop and to grow it. Originally, then it will become a kite mark. That's what I'd like to do. But I
Yeah.
realised for an independent person to say I've released the kite mark, it needs a little bit of traction and buy-in for the schools to do. What I do work closely with Lancashire schools is that delegation of duties, those responsibilities, creating the SIP plan for them. And that has the biggest impact. So, and then the same thing with the statutory roles as well. That how we get instructed, how do we know we're asking the right questions regarding health and safety, regarding send, regarding safeguarding across the terms and capturing it. Whether it's a single central record checks or have we done Legionnaires, have we got the risk assessments done, the fire assessments done,
Martin's Law.
Martin's Law, and have
Oh,
we got that as well?
Dan's so hot on Martin's Law.
Yeah. Also, yeah, I've built a tool. I've built a website checker. So there's a free website checker as well on the school where you can put your website in for that, and it'll scan your website and it'll list all your policies, how recent those policies are, and it'll take you a link to it. It'll have other data such as your last Ofsted inspection. It will check all these different information.
Wow.
But also, it will scan your website for Martin's Law to make it sure that it's not an attractive proposition to the nefarious characters that want to infiltrate the school. It'll look and they making sure there's no open school plans that in there. There's information and it will give you that, are your premises secure in terms of, the website. So the website as well, for
Well,
me,
just give a shout out for it because we will put the link at the end of the video, but
uh,
on the
Josh,
podcast that doesn't appear. Go
I've
on.
been trying. Well, I've got a meeting, the next governor's meeting. We're going to look at Martin's Law in detail. What I'm trying to do is get the governing body, and in the schools that I work with wider, get the governing body to be the person responsible, rather than
An
leave that
individual.
responsibility with the head teacher. Because I think we would all hope that nothing would ever go wrong in any of our schools. But if something does, I think it's too much responsibility for one person to,
Absolutely.
to live with after an
And
event.
actually, that principle is good for a lot of other areas of governance, isn't it? But at the end of the day, there may be somebody who has oversight or an interest in a particular area, but actually, we're all in this together, folks.
Yeah.
We all stand and fall by the success of this. And if for example, the school gets criticised for its send provision in terms of its oversight and governance of it, actually, that's not just the person whose
No.
responsibility was to connect with that colleague, that senior colleague, but it's all of us. This sense of corporate responsibility rests there.
It's also beyond the compliance as well, because people can look like our schools can present themselves as very compliant. We've got everything in place with our policies, with Martin Law, with safeguarding. But unless you're going into the school and feeling it, does everybody live and breathe that? Does everybody get it? Have we just ticked a box here, but how do we actually know that people understand the process that this happens, or where they go if they're safe, or what they do in these situations? But I was at a talk with Vegan Murray, interestingly enough, so obviously Martin's mother, and she was talking about it. She also came to the co-op the second time I've seen her. She was saying that it's not going to impact a lot of schools because she wanted it to be 100 and it's now 200, and it's for a lot of schools they're not going to need to do it. That's the thing. All the time they need to be aware of it. But what she's pushing for, I agree that you should do it anyway. It's the right things to do because the only
Absolutely.
reason that it's a certain number is because the government just she was very disappointed with the number. She said wanted to be at 100 is because they just want to protect businesses, local community halls, or there's a lot of objections to being to so low. But it doesn't matter the size of your school as well. You need to be aware of these things, and it's about doing those, about bringing it in regardless of whether you need to or not. And I think that's the message that we need to get to schools across, that it's important to do this regardless of whether you think you meet the threshold or not.
Well,
Right.
when I've spoken to schools about it, including nursery schools, which are clearly exempt and I've suggested, it might be something you want. There's never been anybody who thought, good, we don't have to do this. They've all kind of seen, yeah, actually, that's something we need to look at. Because my view of it is we've been a bit, this sounds awful, but we've been a bit complacent over premises security over the last maybe 10, 15 years. Because it became a big thing once with Ofsted when they were checking if your gates were locked and if your fences were high enough and everything. And then when that disappeared, I'm not sure there was anything else in place.
Yeah.
And you do say, what about difficult times of the school day, like lunchtime, like first thing in the morning, like last things? Is your premises secure at that point? And everybody kind of looks up and thinks, wow, that's a toughie. And
Yeah.
it is.
It's schools swell with events. You have the parents, it's summer fairs
Yeah.
and summer and Christmas fairs, amazing events, but they do make me a little bit nervous how loose they are going into the schools and coming
Yeah.
back. I don't want to be the party people with this, but have we considered, that just putting a few systems in place that there's just some checks within the door? Because if you think about anyone that's willing to cause harm to schools, they go to a big organization, a big school, they're going to know there's cameras absolutely everywhere that's locked in, that it's going to be very difficult. Chances are they're not going to do that, without much confrontation. Whereas you've got a smaller building, there's not going to be cameras necessarily through there. It's going to be a little bit looser in terms of what's the expectation, because again, they think that's nothing's going to happen to us. And it's only going to be time before we see smaller, hopefully
Yeah.
not. But
I went to a high school in Lancashire for a meeting and was really thrilled to see the children coming in the morning and two members of staff in bright jackets stood at the gates. So whoever was coming in was conscious that they were being checked and being seen.
yeah,
And I thought that's really not an expensive way to do it. It's not tracking systems, it's not cameras, it's not that,
visibility.
but it's enough to make people think twice about
But
whether.
yeah, but also it's a welcome,
Yeah,
Yeah,
isn't it? So you could see it as a safeguard, but actually, I think one of the biggest things that between secondaries and primaries is I love it in the primaries where the staff, or at least the senior staff, are out there just
yeah.
making themselves known. That seems to disappear, not in all secondary schools, but in some secondary schools. This sort of like leaving the school or joining the school is like a duty. Like there's a rota. So actually, and the problem with the rota is those people don't know all the children.
Yeah.
So I think it's more, the emphasis is more on being positive about the welcome we're giving to our children and families when they arrive and when they leave. And more could be done on that. Hey, Josh, you were going to give me the website.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
governanceassurance.co.uk.
There we go.
And there's a
Because
number
on
of free
the
tools on there, as I said. There's a membership element of it, but there's a free audit tool that schools can use. There's a free website checker, and there are organisations that charge hundreds for this. And I've built it for free, where you can put your website in, and it'll give you a full checks over 70 different um, it does 70 different checks. It reads with the DFE data. It goes onto GIAS to the school to make sure you're compliant. It reads everything for your website, and it's completely free. And you can do that, and it can save yourself hundreds. And again, because the website is the shop window of governance for them, I want to make that free for schools. There's also an AI readiness tool as well. Of moving into this age of AI, how prepared are we as governing bodies? So there's a questionnaire that goes through there. It's 12 questions it'll ask you. Then it'll give you an action plan of the next 18 months. That's completely free, of how you as a governing board can then put together that strategy. Because that's the next great inequality that we're going to see in education, is access to AI. So what are we doing as governing bodies to prevent from that? And then behind that, there's membership stuff. But that's if schools want to dive deeper and get like the SIP building reports for it. But yeah, governanceassurance.co.uk.
So is that for all schools nationally?
All schools nationally. Yeah,
Right.
I'm trying to be disruptive as possible, because what you've got is a lot of organisations that exist. They've got huge infrastructure costs with staffing. They're carrying 50 foot, hundreds of people, and they put extortionate costs on these things. And it's not because of the value of the cost of the products, it's because of their staffing infrastructure. What AI is allowing us to do now is give practitioners like me the opportunity, with the expertise and the knowledge, to build tools very, very lean, very inexpensively, and price them correctly, or even give them away for schools. Because that's one of the challenges that I have. If I feel I've got a solution, I feel very difficult to put a price on it when I can just help somebody by giving it to them. I've really struggled with this part. So, you try the website out, check it out. It's really good. I'm really quite proud of it. I'll use it, and it will stay free. There's a more enhanced version behind it, but to be fair, this is all you need, and it'll save you a lot.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I hope everyone's found that fascinating. I know that Stan and I, this is something that sort of, well, makes us sort of stirs our thing. It really is sort of the thing that makes us interesting work actually being involved in schools. And actually, I think that it would be great, Josh, to bring you back in perhaps 18 months just to get a bit of an update as to how that product's working. And if you want to reach out to Josh, then I'll include his email at the end as well. So that'll be on the at the end of the video, as well as the website address. So thank you very much, Josh. Thanks, Stan.
Very much. Thank you.
And everyone, we've got another Frank and Stan next week, so we'll be seeing you all next week. But until then, goodbye, cheerio, have a good one, bye.
Bye.